continue. Oh, never mind.
Hello, world, and welcome back to the With That Being Said podcast brought to you by the Brothers Blue. Today we are doing episode number 26, and we are talking about the third branch of the United States government, which is the judicial branch. And actually, not only am I excited, this is something that I wanted to bring up organically, is that I'm happy that we talked about them in order, with us talking about the executive branch first and then Congress second, and now the Supreme Court, the judicial branch. Because I think the executive branch is our favorite, Congress is our second favorite, and Supreme Court is our third favorite. And I don't like any of them. And a lot of the bad things that the Supreme Court has to involve itself with, it relates to the bad things about Congress. But that's beyond the point. I'm sorry for going off. This is the episode of us talking about the judicial branch, and that's Brother Kyle.
And that is Brother Cody. And so the executive branch might be, or should definitely be like, if we do a second episode on any of the branches of government, that one,
Right.
Especially because we didn't even once talk about the worst presidents.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so another thing that you said that is just kind of weird to me, or like a point that I make all the time, is that like the judicial branch is sort of a direct reflection of the executive branch because it is appointed entirely by the executive branch. And it's it also should be reflective of society, how the nomination or the confirmation process goes, when an executive nominates a person and they're not necessarily in vibe with the social fabric. Their nomination or their confirmation process in Congress probably isn't going to go so smoothly. So the executive branch has and the Congress, both the second branch, both have a huge effect on the third branch, which again is like why I think it is the third branch of government.
And so something that I also thought of is that the Supreme Court is indicative of how term limits have a good cyclical nature that falls upon the executive branch, because the executive branch is the only one that actually has term limits, and because of its cyclical nature due to term limits, you see that fruited by the Supreme Court and who sits on it.
All right, we'll get back to term limits.
Yep.
But so the first note is the judicial branch, and that is its name or whatever in the Constitution, but also obviously its other name is the Supreme Court, or the federal judiciary, which is like the big word. Like you say federal judiciary and nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. You say the Supreme Court and
everyone knows
what you're talking about. But that's just how words work, because those are literally like the same thing.
Knowing how stupid people are.
The federal judiciary also I think refers to the lower federal courts, which is a thing.
Big thing. It's a big thing.
Yeah. So that's why, again, the judicial branch and the federal judiciary are pretty synonymous, but the Supreme Court is like the head of the federal judiciary.
Yep. Right. And that's actually a good way of explaining it. And not only that, if you're going to talk about the semantics of the difference between the federal judiciary and the Supreme Court, is like you said, the Supreme Court is those justices deciding crazy fuck things. But the federal judiciary covers all of it because we have federal judges that, and like that's just a massive plethora of amount of people that is this that's the federal judiciary, not just the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and so the problem is, and this is why I was saying to you that I want to read the Constitution, is because I don't really know about like the extent of the jurisdiction of the federal judiciary, as in like can the president just break the law? So that, but this goes into the jurisdiction thing, is which is funny because my next note is about a word that like this is another one of those situations where it's like I want to research a word.
Right, exactly. And so
And yeah.
I'll say the same thing is like I frequently look at your notes and I feel like I'm actually getting better at like understanding what you're trying to say and like research that I can do. And so I actually feel the same way about the word jurisprudence. I
Yeah.
want to look it up. I want to know what it means. And like we had a whole argument the other day about how combustion engine works. And for me, that is the same semantical conversation of what the word jurisprudence means or understanding. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you'll have to help me make that connection, but all I'll get into is again going further on the word jurisprudence is
Yeah.
it's literally like the definition is the theory or philosophy of the law. And yeah, that's pretty
So
that's pretty open-ended. Like there's a lot there.
So I thought it was also the idea, and maybe this is habeas corpus, and that's the idea of like not the law. Yeah, so the law that has been previously like set. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's precedent, but
Yeah, yeah,
or,
like precedence. So I
or
thought
common law.
jurisprudence and precedence had a lot to do, or I feel like precedence is part of jurisprudence. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, no, and so it totally is, and like that's jurisprudence and whatnot. And I just had to look up habeas corpus because I was curious about this. And habeas corpus is suspending the right to be imprisoned without due process.
Yep, got it. Yep.
So Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War because he was like, "These are Confederates. I don't have time to put them through court and prove that they are. We're just going to put them in jail." So yeah, that's
Awesome.
habeas corpus, and like why I want to do a little or like a deep dive into jurisprudence, because again, it's the theory of law or philosophy of law, and I love that. And like that is good. Like just going to uh guide my research.
Do you want to talk about your next note? It's kind of weird, but whatever. Checks power of Congress by ruling on their decisions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, doesn't the like so does it go from Congress to the Supreme Court and then to the executive?
Well, no. The Supreme Court rules on already existing laws. So technically, they took the power of both Congress and the president, because we know that the way laws work, they go through the House, then the Senate, then the president signs them. The president can literally just be like, nope. It's called the veto power.
Veto.
And literally they can just any law.
Say no. Right.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to get into that. But that's what I'm saying is Supreme Court literally is a check on the power of both of them. And the idea also, sorry, my dog. The idea also within the Constitution is that the president and the Congress check each other's power.
Yeah, right.
Ways like treaty ratification or other things like that, where they check each other's power. But
the idea is that all three branches check each other. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Thank you for giving me a basic civics lesson because every once in a while I need it. So.
No, I wasn't patronizing you. A lot of people don't know this shit, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then all right. So the next note is a good one, and so it says it's supposed to be a reflection of society that represents the will of the people. Yeah. And so again, what I add to it is I think perfect is that it's not.
Okay.
Our Supreme Court is a bunch of fucking geriatrics or politically insane people.
And
Brett Kavanaugh
are literally a multitude of examples of how the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court specifically does not represent the will of the people with certain decisions that they've made. But there are a couple of examples where they did the right thing, or at least they kind of tried. Right, Brown v. Board of Education and Roe v. Wade before it was overturned.
Roe v. Wade was awesome.
Those are reflections of society at the time.
And hold on, for the 4 people that end up watching this video, if you don't know Brown versus the Board of Education, research it and look it up and educate yourself, please.
And so, again, Supreme Court literally does horrible things all the time, like overturning Roe v. Wade. Dred Scott. Dred Scott is literally the worst thing in the entire world. But
wasn't that Jim Crow? Is that what created Jim Crow or no?
Yeah. Well, it was the separate but equal doctrine came out of the Dred Scott decision. So yeah.
All right, great. Not great.
So yeah, you're right. The Supreme Court, what's really unfortunate. I'm actually kind of glad you brought up Brett Kavanaugh because I know more than a little bit about him. He was an investigator on the Ken Starr investigation team that after Bill Clinton. If you didn't know that about Brett Kavanaugh, when he was in his 20s, but now he's on the Supreme Court and seriously, straight up, he should not be on the Supreme Court.
I agree.
And so, but unfortunately, the reality is Supreme Court right now, I think, kind of reflects the unfortunate situation is that 70 million people did vote for Donald Trump, and he is appointed more Supreme Court justices than any president in the modern era. So yeah.
So we get Donald Trump's Supreme Court.
Yes, the Supreme Court reflects that part of our society.
The cyclical nature of the executive branch. How are you president 45 and then 47? That's embarrassing as far as I'm concerned. But yeah,
well, the conversation. Why isn't Mike Pence his vice president? That's a different conversation as well.
Because he threatened to kill him. So maybe that's why. But anyways, your last note really kind of is, and so yeah, the Supreme Court sucks.
What were we talking about the whole time? Yeah.
Right, and the Supreme Court sucks just like Congress sucks, and the reason they both suck more than presidents is because they don't have term limits. Presidents have term limits, And that, I think, has to do with why we like presidents more than we like Congress members or Supreme Court justices.
The only thing is, your favorite presidents all served in Congress.
You're probably right. For most
We
of
went
my favorite
We
presidents,
went through your
Yeah.
favorite presidents and your
Right.
top three at least.
was Clinton Bill
Oh,
Clinton. I love Bill Clinton.
Nope. I'm sorry. You're right. If he's your top three, then no.
I just think Bill Clinton championed the right thing. And so like you said, he did, or no, in our last conversation about him, we don't need to talk about it. But
Hillary
Clinton, he did good on crime, and then he did bad on crime.
Yeah.
And he did good on the economy, and then he ended with the tech bubble. So, yeah. It was weird. It was weird.
Yeah, he was a real like yin and yang one for me. Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, man. Unless there's much else to say, seriously, the fucking Supreme Court sucks, and we knew this was going to be a brief conversation because they do suck.
Yeah, there's very little redeeming qualities about the Supreme Court when they overturned the only good decision they've made in the last 50 goddamn years. Yeah.
Right, that's like the other amendments to the Constitution. It's like, oh, did we forget we're allowed to do that?
Yeah, so I was again Googling recent Supreme Court decisions, and this is Supreme Court basically said that like Trump, or really the executive branch, has immunity from all laws.
That's insane. So, yeah. Great. The highest judge in the land has said that he's immune to everything. So great.
The highest court in the land basically came out and said that the executive branch can do whatever it wants within the purview of its constitutional mandate. Sorry, that was the Supreme Court ruling. Yeah.
Great.
Whatever's within the constitutional mandate, they can do. Like, and that is obviously just like open to interpretation.
Yeah, of course. And the interpretation is they're allowed to do whatever they want. Right? Exactly. So, with that being said,
Knowledge is power.